grievance is not against me. Your grievance is against Hinduism as defined by the sources of Hinduism, which are the Brahmins and the Puranas and the rest of the literature which the Hindus have come up with, which defines what Hinduism is. That is your grievance against. That is what your grievance is against, not against me.
My grievance is the distilling of the whole philosophy into this evil caste
No, my
system.
dear friend, let me tell you. There are 4 or 5 strands of Hinduism today. 4 or 5 different strands.
They're all, maybe they're more.
In one level of speaking, broadly, one level of. One of the strands is temple worship Hinduism, and there you have all sorts of deities, which have completely different histories. The Shaivites have their own history, Vaishnavites have their own history. The Ganapati, he has his own history. Lakshmi, Parvati, all sorts of different histories coming together. Here's the point. Temple worship is a strand of Hinduism. Temple worship could not exist without the caste system. Could not. None of the deities could exist without caste system. Remove caste system away, you don't have temple worship Hinduism anymore. Haven't got. In other words, we can agree, caste system captures temple worship properly.
The same thing applies to Christianity. If you're talking about Jesus being the spokesman and his word being conveyed, that is being completely transformed by the edifice of the church, the Vatican, the priests, or the hierarchy. But that's not the essence of what Christianity
Question.
is.
By the way, I don't agree with plenty of the practices of plenty of variants of Christians.
You're saying the essence of I agree.
My question is
None of us
this.
agree with
My
that.
question is this.
The essence of Hinduism is the caste system.
Question. My question is this. If you remove all the priests in the world,
Let
all
do
the
that.
popes in the world,
Please do that.
all the bishops in the world, all the archbishops in the world, would there still be Christians?
Yes.
Obviously, yes. Now come back to the temple worship Hinduism.
Temple of Hinduism.
I'm talking purely about temple worship Hinduism for now. If you remove all the Brahmins,
Please do.
which I agree with also, but when you remove all the Brahmins, would you have temple worship Hinduism anymore?
Let's not have temple of Hinduism.
In other words, you're not happy with temple worship, which is where I began. I said temple worship Hinduism is evil. Well, I didn't quite say temple worship Hinduism. I said all of Hinduism seems to have fundamentally evil as its building block. Temple worship is one example. Let's go to another example. The other example of a strand of Hinduism today.
You see, that's what I object to. What you said was Hinduism, core of it is a caste system, which is evil. And I agree with that. And then you went on to say that
The
all of
oligarchy,
Hinduism is
internal
evil.
and external,
All of Hinduism can't be evil.
the
I'm going through each of these strands one by one. The second strand, I'm going to prove.
All of Hinduism is evil.
Yes, step by step. The second strand is what I normally term New Age Hinduism. Yes, New Age. All the yoga gurus. Have you heard of this person called Nityananda, for example? Have you heard of Sai Baba?
Yes.
Have you heard of what's his name? Yogi Maharishi. Patanjali.
Iraqi what the bugger's name is? Abu Bakr Bakri. Have you heard of Bin Laden? Have you heard of these guys? It's all the same rubbish, man.
Absolutely, I agree with that.
Exactly.
But I'm talking about Hinduism for now.
No.
I'm talking about Hinduism for now.
We're not about Hindus. We're talking about some idiots, some charlatans who have hijacked the religion. The same
My
applies
dear-
in
my
Islam.
dear friend, my
Same
dear
applies in Christianity. I think we're losing. We're going.
Please, my dear friend, I appreciate your motives might be good. Yeah, I appreciate that. In my conversation with you now for about half an hour, I quite enjoyed our conversation. So I genuinely think you're well intentioned in the discussion. You don't want to hide facts and so on. The only suggestion I'm going to do right now is this. Hinduism, when we go through different strands one at a time, different strands have different properties, different makeups. One at a time, what we find is every single strand is not going to help a human being. It's only against a human being. I'm going to go through one by one. If that's what I was intending to do, one by one. Now, while doing that,
So to summarize it all, and all these strands, you're going to prove to me or to us that all these strands of Hinduism are actually anti-human existence.
yes,
I think I'll need to read it and I'll come back later. I'll read it and come back to you.
you need to read. But let me. So, temple worship, caste system, evil. New Age Hinduism, all the yogis and Maharishis and all or whatnot, evil, because they have denied the definition of what good is. Denied the
There is no good
definition.
in Hinduism. There is no good in Hinduism, so they have no chance anyway. So if Hinduism is at its core an evil religion, then these rishis have no chance at all. Poor guys, don't blame them. So what else is evil about Hindu? What else is evil? How is Hinduism so anti-human existence? What else?
That is why I'm going to
Yeah,
things in
okay,
stages.
that's two evils. Three. What's the third?
Third one is when it comes to village worship. You know, village deities.
Village deity.
Village deities. If you go to a typical village in India, they'd have their own deity.
Yeah, like a tree or something. Like the tree.
Are a bit different. You'd have sword building,
Alright, yeah.
a sword building deity with very gory face and so on, who is a protector deity. Now, when you go to the history of these deities, what you find is that these are historically meant to be their forefathers who had taken turns to go around the village to protect them. And when they died, they were still believed to have protected the village, and that's why they bring them in. Now, how is this particular thing evil? Anti-human. The reason this is anti-human is, I agree, this guy was a real guy. I agree, he saved you, protected you when he was alive. Now that he is dead,
Like Jesus, like Jesus coming back from the dead. Similar, isn't it analogous? Bringing your forefathers back after they died, is that the same as Jesus coming back after dying?
no, they're not the same.
Why is that the same?
Because village deity never came back alive in person.
And Jesus
They,
did.
they have been claimed to have come back alive as statues. Jesus came back alive in person to speak to his apostles, discuss various things, and to move on. Jesus' history was a real resurrection history. You might not agree before I present the facts, but the facts of the argument, based on what is here in the Bible, based on what we find from non-Christian sources, is that the church genuinely believed that they saw the dead man alive. On top of that, despite the fact that there were certainly people who desperately wanted to prove he never rose up from the dead, his grave was empty, and they did not have a viable alternative explanation for an empty grave. Number three, it wasn't just an empty grave. The empty grave was protected by expert authorities. Roman authorities and Jewish authorities had come together to seal the tomb, to make sure disciples don't steal the body of Jesus. These are,
Despite that, he came back from the dead.
despite that, the grave became empty. The disciples claimed to have seen Jesus alive, and the disciples went around the globe, despite persecution, proclaiming that their Lord came back alive. There is only one logical explanation as to why this could have happened, and that is genuinely Jesus came back alive. If that weren't the case, we have serious problems. If Jesus never came back alive, well, why is the grave empty? All that it would have taken the Jewish religious authorities is essentially say, oh, the body is here. Why are you spreading rumors? The body is here. Come here. Here is a dead man. They could have done that. The Roman, what's the term? The professional, what's the term I'm looking for? The name of the reputation of the Roman authorities were at stake. Roman authorities were guarding the tomb, and the tomb went empty. So the reputation of their reputation was at stake. Yet the Romans could never say, "Here is a dead man." What are you blabbering about? Never did. These are serious issues. Another serious issue. Christians were willing to die. in hundreds in the first couple of years, and then thousands and millions in the first couple of centuries. So the question is, on what basis were they willing to die?
Well, that is their choice. They're going to die here. They're strapping and blowing themselves up. They're willing to die. People are willing to die on their own concept. But that's a different issue.
No, it's not. They made a good point. Very, very good point.
People are willing to die for all kinds of reasons.
No, that is a very, very good point. So you had martyrs both at that time, like what I am suggesting, and also this time, all sorts of martyrs, religious martyrs and so on. You are right. These are comparable. But the comparison ends only in verifying the conviction of their hearts. That I agree with. Both of them show genuine conviction. The suicide bombers, they genuinely think, especially when there are plenty of them, they genuinely think so. They genuinely believe so. Similarly, Christians genuinely believe so and therefore were willing to die. But the question is, what was the substance of the beliefs? That is the question which needs to be asked. It's not comparable in the sense of
that is conviction.
Conviction-wise, they are comparable.
They're all going to heaven. That's how you can.
Their conviction is no. Whether they go or not is a different story. But they think they are going. They genuinely think they are going, and therefore convictions are comparable. But what underpins the conviction is where the differences show up. What underpins the conviction for a terrorist of modern times from radical Islam? The conviction is that a third party, namely Muhammad, received some revelation from Allah, which are private revelations. Allah indirectly spoke to Muhammad. This guy who is becoming a suicide bomber, does he know about that in person? No. Can he verify that? No. In other words, his belief, the underpinning of his belief is just what it is, just a belief. He just believes.
Christians do the same to believe. You see,
I'll clarify.
Look, let's bring to a halt. Let's stop this conversation. The problem here, which I find in all this time we're having a proper discussion. And you talk about your Christianity, you extol Jesus, and as I said, with a lot of respect for Jesus and things. Then don't bring other people in and criticize them. Your role here is to extol Christianity, is to bring out what you believe in, and that's absolutely fine. You can discuss that. Then don't bring in things about the Islamic guys. Did he believe? He believes Muhammad said this. Hinduism is evil at its core. That's where you go wrong.
Here is where the problem, my dear friend, is. The problem is you are commending to me I should not be talking about things beyond my beliefs.
You should, but you are questioning whether Muhammad was told this by Allah.
Yeah, but your grievance is that I should not be going beyond my beliefs. I should be only defending my belief.
No, not defending your belief. If you will mention other beliefs in comparative terms, but don't kind of doubt other people's thinking.
Doubting.
When you said that they think that Allah spoke to Muhammad.
That's what Islamic tradition says.
Yeah, that's what it says. And a lot of what Christianity says as well sounds a bit.
Can I make that point of comparison, please? Once I make that point, it will be clear, I think. For an Islamic martyr, in his mind, he believes, but he can't verify. He believes genuinely. I agree. He genuinely believes, and that's why 15-year-old, 20-year-old people blow up themselves. They genuinely believe. But what they're believing in is not something they can verify. They believe their conviction is very genuine. But what underpins the conviction is very flaky. They're just trusting Muhammad.
Similar to somebody thinking they go to heaven.
I'll clarify.
If somebody thinks they'll go to heaven because they believe in Jesus, that's pretty flaky as well.
No, let me clarify.
That's not flaky?
Let me clarify. In the case of Jesus, the first century church were willing to be persecuted, and what underpinned their conviction was this. They saw Jesus in public verifiable. They saw Jesus. They saw Jesus crucified. They saw Jesus buried. They saw the tomb go empty, and they saw him alive. It's not something for which they depend on someone else telling them stuff, but you have first-hand witnesses, public events.
So the Christians who are being martyred, the mainly martyring was done by Emperor, what's his name? Diocletian in 300
That's
AD. So those Christians never saw Jesus going up to heaven.
You're talking about later. I'm
No,
talking
no,
about
no. That's the main martyrdom, the main martyring of
that's
Christians.
not true, that's not true.
So when did the Christians? when was the-
Persecution.
Yeah, that's happened throughout in dribs and drabs.
Persecution of Christians began soon after resurrection. The first people who were persecuted were the apostles, Peter, John, Paul, and so on. Persecution of the disciples of Christians began right in the first century.
Carried on for 300 years.
It went on.
Till Constantine.
The point I made, the earlier point I made is about the core of the witness accounts, which comes from the first century, not the fourth century. The first century account is what I am talking about. Why was Paul willing to be a martyr? Why was Peter willing to be a martyr? Why was James willing to be a martyr? These are the people I am talking about. Now, by that I don't mean only those who we can name, but also those who we can't name, yet verify off. The anonymous witnesses, martyrs. All these people, I'm talking about not the fourth century, the first century. All these people, the beliefs, the conviction was genuine. But what underpinned the conviction was what they saw, not third-hand hearsay accounts of what they saw to be true. Jesus' tomb was a public place. Public place. The church in Jerusalem, soon after resurrection, was a public group. Thousands came to Jesus. Literally, many different days, thousands came as response to singular preachings. So, thousands were added. Those were living in the vicinity in terms of time and space. On what basis were they testifying? Basis of testimony, empty tomb despite the Jewish opposition, empty tomb despite the Roman opposition, empty tomb, which explains the Christian behavior, which is cowards becoming brave men. Now,
And how did he die by the cross?
who?
How did he die on the cross?
Jesus. Jesus was crucified.
Yeah, and how did he die?
When you say how did he?
So he was there for a while?
Yeah. Jesus died while on the cross.
How many days?
Just one day, just 3 hours.
We don't die on the cross in one day. Of course, he might do because normally you can't die in one day on the cross.
Normally. So here is where there are details about Jesus' death. This is what happened. Joseph of Arimathea and Nicodemus, two prominent people among the Jews, went to Pontius Pilate and they said, "Can we have the body of Jesus? We'd like to bury. He's our beloved master. We'd like to bury him." When they went to Pontius Pilate did not just believe in their words. He essentially asked his own subordinate, a Roman centurion. He asked him, has he died? The Roman centurion had to use his own techniques to figure out if the person was dead. So they essentially pierced his body, saw blood and water come out, separated, which I don't know the details here, but the medical professionals say that is a sign of death. Water separated from
So he died within hours.
he died, yes, so he was testified. Now, how exactly did he die is a different question. But he was verified to have died, not by Christians. Christians also saw that. But when Christians saw that and wanted the body, the Romans verified. Expert executioners made sure
So
Jesus
he
died.
died within hours. It's very unusual for a crucifixion anyway. He died within hours.
Unusual.
In
It could be
crucifixion,
unusual. Crucifixion was carried out in the first century in all sorts of different ways.
Yes.
All sorts. There's no one way of crucifying.
But the victim of crucifixion, you don't die straight away. It's a very cruel form of death.
In the what?
It was a very cruel form of killing somebody. When you were crucified, it took you 2 or 3 days to die.
So crucifixion, the eventual death happened in all sorts of different ways. In some crucifixions, it is told they didn't even use a nail. They just tied to the wooden things, and they allowed birds of prey with the blood coming out and so on. Birds of prey essentially eat. So they could see all that. That's one. The other is the weight of the body. Essentially. So essentially the problem of respiration also leading to the death. So a few different inputs involved in the eventual death. But that is not the point.
Anyway, so he died soon.
He was verified to have died by
And he was buried
experts.
up. He was buried.
He was buried
By whom? By the
by
authorities.
Joseph of Arimathea and Nicodemus, two very prominent people among the Jews of that time. Very prominent to an extent. One of them is a popular teacher. Another is part of the what is called Sanhedrin, the council of elders, which is around 70 for an entire nation. So it's like talking about MPs. Even though MPs we have 500 plus, we're talking here even less. So prominent people got hold of the body, buried the body in a prominent place. Jesus was buried in the tomb of Joseph of Arimathea, his own place, his own ground. That's where he was buried. But the Jewish authorities went to Pontius Pilate and they said, but disciples claimed, Jesus himself claimed that he would come back alive. And disciples still believe so. What we don't want to happen is for a rumor to start, where the rumor is that Jesus came back alive. And this could happen if the disciples stole the body. So what they did was, can you please make sure this doesn't happen? So Pontius Pilate sends Roman soldiers to go. They did a couple of things. One, seal the tomb with a large stone and seal it. So large stone and then a seal, number one. Number two, they were guarding the tomb. They were guarding in person. Despite this, on the Sunday, early in the morning, the tomb went empty. There is people have been trying, atheists, all sorts of opponents of Jesus have been trying all sorts of theories. Hallucination theory, maybe Jesus never died, maybe he was just resuscitated.
I'm not an opponent of Jesus. All I'm saying is these kind of things are kind of magnified, and that's what I'm trying to say.
True, in history, things could be magnified, but purely because things could be magnified, I don't think we should say in the case of Jesus also it was magnified. We really need to genuinely ask the question in this specific case, in the case of Jesus, did a magnification of an idea happen? And there the point, my dear friend, is this. Roman authorities were involved. That is the crucial part. Authorities from Rome were involved, Roman authorities were involved, Jewish authorities were involved, Christians were involved, common folks were paying attention. So we're not talking about conspiracy theories. We're not talking about. We have, in terms of manuscriptal
I'm
evidence,
also talking about Paul trying to get a grip on things, because after Jesus died, and as would happen, people had a lot of theories. Of course, you discuss it, you have your own viewpoints, the Gnostics, all kinds of people were. And then Paul came along and he put everything under their thumb, saying, no, this is how we're going to structure this whole thing. Because things are going out of hand.
so this is a popular idea. The popular idea is that Paul.
We are born sinners. We must, pray to God to be absolved of our sins.
Let's put it this way. The what is called.
In fact, a religion, an organized religion, which actually, you're talking about Hinduism being inherently evil, not the caste system. That is evil, no question about it. But you're saying the core thing about Hinduism is evil. A religion which actually portrays humanity as born sinners, I would question that concept. I wouldn't call it evil, as strong a word as you use, but I would question that whole concept, that humanity is evil.
So let me ask you this.
Would Jesus even have understood that comment? Jesus came talking about love. And if Jesus heard Paul describe all of humanity as evil,
Let let me ask.
for us to atone for our sins. Come on.
Let me ask you this. Let's just so no one gets offended here. Let's consider this imaginary man. Yeah, just this imaginary man who is married to his wife. Yeah, he likes his wife a lot, loves her a lot. She's a beautiful lady. Plenty of people look at her with lustful eyes, and by lustful eyes, I mean in all sorts of varying degrees. Varying degrees. Someone just for a few moments, whatever. Would you consider that to be evil? Would you consider that to be a problem?
Evil is a very.
Okay, let's use a mild term. Would you consider that to be a problem?
If someone appreciates beauty,
No, I'm talking about lust.
no, it's not acceptable.
Very unacceptable. Do you think, of course you have your experience, you have the experience of maybe your friends, families and so on, and even people, you might have a rough idea of human beings here. Do you think human beings generally do that?
Might do.
No,
They do. Some do, some
Generally,
don't.
they do it.
Some do, some don't.
In other words, I am not the only one saying human beings have serious issues. All of us. I'm not the only one. You yourself are saying it.
Of course we are serious.
Lustful eyes, problem, and you and I agree. Generally, we seem to have that problem. That's just one example. Anger, hatred, malice, all sorts of issues human beings have. Jealousy, we have all sorts of issues, and therefore,
That's a human condition. That's not being evil.
no. In other words, let me put it this way. In other words, someone at some time made a remarkable statement. This is what he said: sin, human wickedness, is at once the most statistically verifiable thing. You find it everywhere. Yet, something which is denied time and time again. I didn't use quite his terms. I'm paraphrasing. The point is, human wickedness is quite popular. Everyone knows about that. Yet, many people argue against it. They say, oh, this doesn't exist. Human beings are innately good. We're all good people and so on. How many people show up in the park saying, oh, why did you call me bad? I'm a good man. But according to our conversation in the last couple of minutes, everyone, most, if not all, using that one parameter, most of us would be wrong. But if you put together various such issues, or do you have anger, do you have this, do you have that, do you covet, do you have jealousy, all sorts of things put together, you and I would agree, human beings have a real problem. And the problem is, we seem to do even things which we really disapprove of. I mean, for example, if I lust, everyone who lusts, I don't think everyone would turn up and say, oh no, lust is good. No, they themselves disapprove of it. Yet they do it. In other words, we ourselves are good judges in this. We have a serious problem. And Jesus mentioned, one of the, you know what, there are plenty of ways you can figure out that Jesus is divine. One of the important ways is his evaluation of human nature is spectacularly accurate. No one else did that. That too for a man who spoke about love, just like you said. Love, show your cheek, show your this. So, mentioned all sorts of beautiful things. Also spoke about the gory nature of human beings, the dirty nature. He said, out of your heart starts all evil thoughts, adultery, fornication and so on. He used some colorful language, not positive but negative. In other words, Jesus understood the nature of man in a way Mahatma Gandhi did not. Nelson Mandela did not. As much as we appreciate their works, within the purview, within the perimeter of their works, what we need to appreciate is Jesus is not comparable to any of these people. Jesus had an evaluation of a human being remarkable, and his death, burial, resurrection is very historical. No one else comes even close. Hinduism is a set of beliefs, like what you said, philosophies, ideas put together, Puranas and all those things. We can sit and talk about Hinduism for many hours. The fact of the matter is, you can bring them all together, but if I ask the question, are the conclusions proportional? How does one conclude Shiva is God? How does one conclude? Shiva.
Not God. But anyway,
How does many people claim Shiva to be God?
when you claim there is a God, there is. Oh, we go back to our original discussion about there being God. But there is no God anyway, so that's the end of that discussion.
We went through a long argument there. We said very specific reasons. There has to be a God.
No, you didn't quite say that. You said we talked about the universe. You said even the universe is finite, while the concept of infinity is such that God comes in that concept of infinity. So and that's
That
beyond.
wasn't my only point. My first point was universe can be observed to be finite, and universe can be estimated to have had a beginning. Based on these two, we necessarily need an explanation for the existence of universe outside of the universe. We necessarily need it. It's a philosophical, logical necessity. It has to be there. Without which none of this is real. Without which none of this would make sense. So we need to have a God. Well, what kind of God is a different question. Is he a good God, bad God? Is a different question. But we have to have a God. There is no argument about that. As long as we go through the motion of discussing these logical points, there has to be a God.
So that's it. But anyway, I don't agree there has to be a God.
You please tell me, based on my points, with a finite universe, with a beginning, please tell me, without the existence of God, how did this come into existence?
I don't have enough physics knowledge to explain to you as to how it all happened.
As much as you can think. No, sir, let's not ask Stephen Hawking. Stephen Hawking is just a physicist. He can talk about physics all day long. He can tell you the universe had a beginning. He can tell you that. But I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about philosophy here, which goes beyond science. The question is, if there was a beginning,
It doesn't go beyond science. It's a parallel.
it's not a parallel science. It's a
It doesn't
parallel
go beyond
field.
science.
If you mean it's a
Parallel
parallel
field,
field, yeah, that is what we call
It's not
philosophy.
beyond science. It's like an apple and an orange. An apple go beyond the orange.
I know where the confusion could be. For lack of, for simplicity's sake, let's just call philosophy is a parallel field. Science can't explain this. Philosophy has to come in. So question to you is philosophical. Stephen Hawking can't help. You yourself can help because
And Stephen Hawking perhaps is a bigger philosopher than many philosophers.
come on, Stephen Hawking is not a philosopher. No. If you go back to Stephen Hawking for philosophy, you need to tell me a few philosophical statements he has made. But if you go to Stephen Hawking for philosophy, I would say no, that's not a good idea. Neither should you go to Richard Dawkins for philosophy. Richard Dawkins, if you want a few biological statements about biology, maybe. Unfortunately, in his God delusion, he talks about plenty of philosophical statements. Plenty of them blatantly incorrect. Yet he doesn't have a clue. He doesn't have a clue, which is understandable.
One statement that hopefully
He has plenty of statements. I haven't brought my. I haven't brought.
Thomas Aquinas to demonstrate 5 ways of Thomas
Raquel, how are you
Aquinas
today?
to demonstrate
Be honest, you have a visa to stay in London.
5 ways of Thomas Aquinas to
Aquinas, yeah,
demonstrate that God exists.
Yeah.
Explain that.
Yeah. Now, but before that, so the point is, philosophically speaking, in terms of the existence of universe, we have a huge question mark, which is a question mark as long as you don't take the next obvious step, which is to
God.
Now, you see, that is the point which most people advance. The moment the moment philosophy corners you and says there has to be a God, then the question is like what the gentleman is asking, and I'm sure it's a genuine question from him, but it's not a genuine question from philosophy, because those who understand the nature of an infinite being would necessarily appreciate infinity does not have a reason of existence outside of itself. It exists because of its own self. That is infinity, which is what we were talking about earlier. Now, we see a shadow of that in mathematical infinities. In mathematics, there are all sorts of different infinities. In mathematical infinities, we see a shadow of it. In the real infinity, which is God Himself, we see the absolute essence of it, which is God by definition. Once you understand His conception, God by definition does not need a reason for existence beyond Himself, and it's not alone that It's not alone saying he doesn't need, but he is the reason for his own existence, which is the crucial reason why the God, the universal God, Yahweh, who revealed himself through the nation of Israel, gave a remarkable name for himself. I'm sure there are all sorts of reasons for his name, but one of the very crucial reasons for his name Yahweh, I am who I am, is I believe this particular reason. And the reason is, I am the reason for my own self. I am who I am. There is nothing else beyond me which could explain me. Nothing else. And this is a unique by himself. There is no other being which could identify itself in this particular way. Everything else has to go back to that guy, this guy. I have to go back to my parents. The parents have to go back to their parents and so on. All the way back. And if you go all the way back to Adam, he has to say, oh, God created me. If you go back to the planets, galaxies, oh, God created us. God created us. Heavens, God created us. Angels, God created us. But God is beyond all. But it is not alone that God does not need a creator beyond him, but more crucially, once we understand logic, what we would say is that God is necessarily his own reason for his existence. That's a necessity.
Why did God create the devil?
Well, that's a good point. So now we have moved on though. His question now is, his grievance now is about evil. Why the devil? The answer is pretty simple. Now, this gentleman, I don't know his religious stance.
None.
Well, there can't be anyone with a none stance.
I believe God is a spaghetti monster.
Yeah. So he has contradicted himself in the last 1 minute. You can't have a non-religious belief.
Your God. You don't believe in your God. I believe the God was a spaghetti monster.
Yeah. So your God is. But anyway, it doesn't matter.
But I would ask him simply this: what is the number one thing in your life? What is the number one thing in your life?
Yeah.
What is that?
What is the number one thing in your life?
The flying spaghetti monster.
Well, that's your.
Can you see the influence of Richard Dawkins there? Can you see that? A man, is he your friend? I saw you coming and talking to you earlier.
He means nothing to me. He's not my God. He's not my God. No, he's not my God. No, evil man. He's talking about the devil now. He's talking about the devil.
He is ashamed of you. Now the point is this. The point is this.
He's the devil.
The tragedy is this. A man like him, and I'm sure he is well qualified in terms of academics, well qualified in, well, so I would think, well qualified in terms of profession, well qualified in terms of maybe economic status and so on. I am sure he is well qualified in all sorts of different ways. At the least in terms of relationship, human relationships, which any human is capable of, which is phenomenal in itself. Well qualified in all those regards, yet he thinks, talking about history, talking about philosophy, talking about the existence of God is only comparable to talking about his spaghetti monster. Can you believe how he equated those two?
The points he's making a very good point. But that's his belief.
That's his
No, I get you. I take that. I take it. At least for the moment, that's his belief. At least for the moment, that's his belief. But the problem is this: even for this minute, with this particular belief, the tragedy is,
Who do you
how
think
come a
created
man
your
like
God?
him?
Who created your God? The flying spaghetti monster created your God.
Now,
Saying that he didn't got the
tell me a few historical resources for the flying spaghetti monster.
None.
A few historical witness accounts about the flying spaghetti monster.
Everything that you see
Is he
around
going to
here-
witness? My dear doctor friend, is he going to stand here and testify for the flying spaghetti monster?
Everyone in this world likes spaghetti.
Well, not me.
They all love pasta, spaghetti.
Not me. Not me.
Italian
Italian food is a bit. I'm not a huge fan of Italian food.
Noodles. It's not bloody pasta. It's not
But no, not much of noodles also.
Talking of philosophy, what about that argument of answer? God is the best thing we can think of.
Yeah. So now, Now, one second. Oh, yes, sorry, go
God
on.
is a king.
Actually, very good.
God is the best
I need to
king.
move on.
Yeah, good to see you.
That's because the pleasure's mine.
Yeah, pleasure to see you. No, please remember the fact that he was ashamed of calling you his friend. All right, now, well, I know that was those were comments made as a comedy. I think I'm pretty sure they are people who are reasonably qualified in all sorts of different ways. The tragedy, my dear friends, is that we as human beings living in the 21st century, when a conversation comes up about God, we really need to take it seriously. By seriously, I don't mean with gloom and this and that, but rather what I mean is go through the facts, evaluate the facts, and then come to appropriate, justifiable conclusions. If the only conclusion we can come to, especially in regards to Jesus Christ, where if you argue about Jesus Christ, no one is going to fight against you. If you argue against Jesus Christ, no one is going to chop your head off or going to beat you up or whatever. The point is, with Jesus Christ there is plenty of liberty, but let's not use the liberty in a very irresponsible way. So please let us take these arguments carefully, evaluate them, and come to appropriate conclusions. Hello, how are you doing? All right? How are you doing? All right, both of you? Are you both all right?
I don't know what's happening now.
So we are talking about God, Jesus Christ. What do you think about Jesus Christ?
My English is so bad and
That's fine. You understand Jesus, the name Jesus. What do you think about Jesus?
I don't know. I don't know anything that I am. Yes, but
Where are you from?
from Spain.
Spain. So, let's put it this way. Jesus is a person in history. Do you appreciate it? History.
Yo no sé una persona en la historia. De Jesus es
Person in history. Yeah. Do you appreciate that? How about you? Do you believe in Jesus?
No.
What do you think about Jesus?
No. I don't.
Where are you from? Spain also.
Spain, yeah.
In terms of Jesus, he is a historical person. His teachings are historical. He claimed to be God. He showed up at the right time, with the right people, with the right message. The Jews were expecting a Messiah to come. You know, in the Old Testament, in the Bible, in the Old Testament, the idea of Messiah, Christ, Savior of the world. Yeah? So Jesus came in at the right time, with the right message, to the right people, did the right things. Eventually, was crucified, was buried, came back alive. You know, in many nations, we take Jesus for granted. In many nations, we associate Jesus with corrupt religious groups. Yeah. People who swindle money from us, we will do that. We might associate them with all sorts of corrupt behavior. Yeah. But the fact of the matter is, we need to come to Jesus, check out who He is. Yeah. And Jesus is verifiable historically to be God. Have you got a Bible at home? So, please get a Bible. Yes, in español.
Sí, español.
So if you get a Bible at home, please go through. So in the Bible you have the Old Testament.
Yeah, we know this history because we had some classes at the school, religion classes, and in Spain, most of the people believe in God and go to church and they are prayers, but there are some people that don't believe in God and believe in other religions.
Yeah.
But we know about the history of Jesus Christ and God and so on.
Yes. So one of the serious problems of our modern times is there's plenty of confusion.
What?
Plenty of confusion
About God.
So essentially, because there are all sorts of different religions, people think, oh, maybe none of them is true. That's what people
Yeah, but
normally.
they are in the right of believing in other religions, and
What do you mean right?
they have the right.
No, that's not true. So let's put it this way. So, do you have the right? So if you went around saying, I am the queen of the universe, what would happen to you? If you went around
No,
saying,
no, that could be a
dictator.
Yeah, it could be that case. I mean, if someone says that I'm the king and you are going to do what I say,
No, I didn't mean that. If you personally,
yeah,
if you personally went around saying, I am the queen of the universe, what would happen to you?
no.
What would happen to you?
I would, I don't know.
No, is that your friend?
Nobody would believe me.
Nobody would believe you, but it
Yeah.
won't stop there. It won't stop there. Is that your friend?
Yeah.
So your friend would go and complain to your family. Oh, what's your name?
No, not to my family.
To you, yeah. She'll come to you first, and she would say, stop talking nonsense. Yeah.
Yeah.
But if you still say, no, I'm still the queen of the universe, she'd go and tell the family, your daughter is messed up.
No, I think my friends are stupid.
Exactly, that's what I meant.
No problem.
No, what? Stupidity is no problem? Now,
No problem. But
if you
but we are
very
problems because
next day she might come to you and say, I am the queen of the universe, you better come and fall down before me.
no.
So now it becomes a problem. In other words, people do not have the right to do anything and everything. No, that is wrong. There is a popular idea which makes people think you can do all you want to do. That is completely wrong. You can't just drive in a built-up area with 30 miles speed limit. You can't just drive at 50 miles and say I had a right to do that. No, they'll charge you, give you points on your license. You can't do many things. Yeah, and one of the things you can't do is lie. Yeah, make up things on your own, come up with your own ideas about God. Those things are not permitted. You're not supposed to do that. Of course, people during this age and this time and age, last many centuries, because of the complexities involved in resolving some of these problems, people are being given the liberty, the space to say, okay, no problem, keep your religion. But the point is, if we had time and space, if we can sit together and say, oh, let's think through this, you're not supposed to come up with your own ideas and make up stuff on your own and so on. Are you with me so far? Are you with me so far? Yeah, with me so far. In other words,
Básicamente es como sentarse a razonar y hablar.
in other words,
Que se conducían, no sé. La que no puedes comparar la conducción con la moral, por ejemplo, que no te podían decir. Sí, que tú no puedes.
in other words, when it comes to God, we're not talking about I have right to do anything. No, we only have right to do sensible things. And the sensible thing that we need to do is to figure out who God is. We need to figure out. Of course, you have time.
Que necesitamos como descubrir quién es Dios o qué es Dios para nosotros.
What's that?
No, it's a joke. He was joking with a friend of us.
Is that with a friend of?
Of us.
Okay.
No, it doesn't matter.
So point is, please take your time, but think through this carefully. God would expect you to come to reasonable conclusions, to go through reasonable evaluations. God would expect you to do that. You can't just show up before God one day in Judgment Day and say, oh, I had a right, I just did this, not that. God would say, no, I gave you a mind to think. I gave you faculties, eyes to see. I gave you senses to gather information from your environment. I gave you all this, and I would have expected you to understand and to take appropriate decisions. With me so far? And that is where my challenge is this. In all of your ministry of all sorts of religions, all sorts. Let's say for today you have Hinduism, Islam, Buddhism, Jainism, Sikhism, Confusion. Was that?
A lot of religions.
A lot of religions. But can I please challenge you in this particular way? There is only Jesus who is the only verifiable God. Verifiable. Every other idea either is historically untrue or just belief statements which are not verifiable. With me so far?
Yeah, we catch the message, so we are going to think about God.
Yes, well done.
Yeah,
So
we
when
catch it.
are you visiting London or are you living
Yeah.
here? Or?
No, visited. Only
So
visited.
when you go back home, please get a Bible.
Spanish one.
Spanish one, yeah, Espanol,
Yeah.
Spanish rules, yeah. Get a Bible. Whether Spain rules, whether Spanish is a great language or not, please get a Bible.
Okay.
And read.
So thank you very much.
Read
Thank
about
you.
Jesus first and make your decisions.
Okay, thank
God's
you.
blessings. Yeah, see
Thank you. Bye.
So that's that's what we're talking about. People need to take information about Jesus seriously, carefully, and we have solid facts and figures for us to evaluate and come to reasonable conclusions. And just if I could mention this, to come to conclusion about Jesus Christ, you don't have to make complicated statements about the Bible. All that you need to do is figure out if the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke and John, are reasonable historical documents. If they are reasonable historical documents, then the life of Jesus is clearly out there for us to see that God exists and that Jesus himself is portrayal of God in some shape or form. And Jesus gives additional information. He says, I am a representation, a true representation of the Father in heaven. So Jesus gives all those kinds of information for us to follow him faithfully. In Jesus we have eternal life. Outside of Jesus we haven't got eternal life. So all your belief statements would not help you. But Jesus and Jesus alone would give us life and help us. Amen.